were you doing what it takes to win? You had too many people going after him for stuff that wasn't going to stick. It wasn't going to influence his voters. So what I would say to you, Whoopi, and what I would say to anybody that doesn't want J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or somebody like that to succeed him, focus on what's going to win.
Whoopi Goldberg never expected Stephen A. Smith's destruction, and the way he tore apart her whole narrative was brutal. What started as a normal TV debate turned into something far more destructive. Even the crowd looked shocked. But before moving further, if you like short commentary videos with full breakdowns like this, take just 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel. And now, let's get straight into it.
Well, it is a mandate, and I'm going to explain why. And I don't mind the question, but let me be very clear. I'm no supporter of Trump. I'm a supporter of truth and the facts. And here's the facts. The man won every swing state. He increased in terms of his voter turnout in his favor from the standpoint of blacks, Latinos, and young voters. He increased his numbers in that regard from 2020. 89% of the counties shifted to the right. That's a mandate. We can sit up there and play around all we want.
That was the first crack. Stephen A. looked at the map, the swing states, the numbers, and said what that panel did not want to hear. Trump's win was a mandate. Not because Trump is universally loved, but because Democrats were rejected in plain sight. Voices like Whoopi want every loss to sound narrow, technical, almost accidental. Stephen A. refused to give them that comfort, and that is where things got uncomfortable.
But the problem is that if you're the Democratic Party and you lost 49.8% to 48.3%, and you're looking at that 1.5% dip, that's an excuse for you to say, what we did really wasn't that bad. We should continue to do that. Don't continue to do that. Find a new strategy.
But do you think those groups, the black voters, the Latino voters, and the others that you mentioned, are they going to regret it soon?
Possibly. I think so. I don't like what I'm seeing from Trump. I didn't like what I saw with Zelensky. I didn't like what I saw with a few things. But in the end,
Zelensky.
The point, I didn't like it. But in the end, what it comes down to is this. The American people, in their eyes, it wasn't about him. They were voting against what the Democrats were throwing in their direction.
Because he pulled the conversation away from Trump's personality and dragged it back to Democratic failure. People were not just voting for Trump, they were voting against what Democrats kept throwing at them. That single line destroys the whole comfort blanket. Suddenly the problem is not one loud Republican. The problem is the message, the tone, the arrogance. And once Stephen A. set that frame, Whoopi could no longer hide behind studio applause. But this is where it got even worse. He went straight into the Kamala Harris collapse and said the quiet part out loud. She was set up to fail. Democrats knew Biden was weak long before they admitted it. And instead of confronting it honestly, they tried to force the public to play along until the damage was already done.
Are you referring to Kamala?
I would love it. I'm referring to all of them. Everybody, nobody's getting a pass from the Democratic Party. Well, again, she was the candidate, but we know what happened. I thought she was set up to fail by the Democratic Party personally because you bypassed the primary. You knew that Biden wasn't ready. You knew it for a year, and you did nothing. And you were really trying to sell the American people on pushing him forward as the Democratic nominee, knowing that inauguration he would have been 82 years of age. Stop it.
So what?
That was brutal because it did two things at once. It shredded the bad luck excuse, and it exposed the machine behind the failure. Stephen A. was not handing Republicans credit. He was saying Democrats sabotaged themselves. And once that idea is in the room, people like Whoopi are no longer defending victims. They are defending a strategy that already blew up in front of the whole country.
It was important, I think, for Democrats to show that they stood with the LGBT community, that they stood with black women and women in general, because once you let us go, once you let women and poor people...
It sounds powerful in the moment, but it falls apart fast. Stand with women, fine. Nobody is arguing those groups don't matter, but that was never Stephen A.'s point. He was not attacking those groups. He was attacking the habit of using them like a shield every time someone questions whether Democrats actually know how to win anymore.
You were about to disagree.
I was disagreeing with this. As a Democrat, the bottom line is this. When we talk about poor people, who ain't thinking about poor people? Democratic Party, I know I do. I know that most candidates within the Democratic Party that I know they think about poor folks. I know they think about the desolate and the disenfranchised. I get that. But what I'm saying is that during the campaign, were you doing what it takes to win? You had too many people going after him for stuff that wasn't going to stick. It wasn't going to influence his voters. So what I would say to you, Whoopi, and what I would say to anybody that doesn't want J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or somebody like that to succeed him, focus on what's going to win.
That right there was the body shot. He separated morality from strategy. The issue is not whether these communities matter. The issue is whether Democrats campaigned in a way that could actually beat the other side. The answer was no. She was speaking in emotional obligation. He was speaking in political reality. And then he tightened the knife.
What is the winning issue now?
Affordability and safety.
Yes.
Period. Affordability and safety in the
Which
streets of the
affects
United
all
States of
those
America.
groups.
And
It does. It affects all
a
those
willingness to cross the aisle and show that you're willing to work with people to get stuff done so we don't have this chaos just because we disagree.
Affordability and safety. The whole indictment in 2 words. That is why people like Whoopi struggle against somebody like Stephen A. because the second politics gets translated back into real life, the performance dies. Rent is real, groceries are real, crime is real. But the messaging from panels like this often sounds built for elite affirmation, not normal voters, and this was never just one good exchange.
What have you. But in the end, the Democrats give the credit where credit is due at this particular moment in time. I think that they've learned from some of their mistakes anyway. When you see what happened in New York with Mamdani, when you see what happens in New Jersey with Cheryl as the governor, when you see what happens with Spanberger in Virginia, clearly there's something that's going on within the Democratic establishment that's saying, let's focus on real issues that are pertinent to the American people. Let's make sure we articulate ourselves appropriately so we don't lose sight of what the message should be. Leading up to the election, they did just that, and I thought they handed him.
Because even outside the flashpoint, Stephen A. kept hammering the same point. Democrats only start recovering when they stop floating in rhetoric and start speaking to what people actually live through. With Whoopi, the pattern is obvious now. She overprotects women when criticism gets uncomfortable. She overprotects Democrats when accountability gets too direct. And she keeps falling back on one-sided narrative farming whenever the facts cut the wrong way. Then something nobody expected got mentioned. The Serena Williams moment may not look political on the surface, but it reveals the same instinct. The second Stephen A. said something critical involving a woman, the reaction was not debate or nuance. It was instant defense.
Why wasn't it, damn, Serena was great?
Yeah.
Why is it about some ex-boyfriend she hasn't thought?
Because
why
it
is it
wasn't about
that?
that. And I'm surprised that Stephen A. Smith actually missed the moment.
He's a provocateur.
Yes, he is.
I love him.
This was, Serena crip walking was really about what happened to her when she did the same crip walk after she beat Sharapova in the 2012 Olympics. She did that crip walk then, and it was on Wimbledon grass, and everyone said that it was disrespectful. So for Serena, because she was dancing. So she was doing a crip walk, which is
Disrespectful to who? The grass?
That clip exposes the formula. The moment a woman becomes the center of the story, criticism gets reframed as disrespect. Scrutiny becomes bias. Pushback becomes unfairness. Stephen A. keeps running into it because he refuses to play by those emotional rules. But this is where it got even worse for Whoopi. Because when Alyssa Farah Griffin made the most basic point imaginable, that living in America is not the same as living under Iran's regime, Whoopi still pushed into the most explosive framing possible.
So that's why I said you weren't saying what I heard was not what you meant.
I think it's very different to live in the United States in 2025 than it is to live in Iran.
Not if you're black.
not for everybody.
Not if you're black.
Guys.
And it's a pigeon. That is emotional escalation, and it sounds powerful for 5 seconds inside a studio before getting torn apart everywhere else. Because once you put black life in America next to women living under legal repression in Iran, you are not clarifying anything. You are flattening reality for effect. Then Mar entered the picture.
I see we were talking about the trans issue before, and the New York Times really has come over on that to the sort of the sensible, liberal, not crazy woke position. I think this is a great first step toward getting the Democrats back to sanity. And a second good step would be, we got to do something about The View. I really believe that. I mean...
Because his argument was not just that Whoopi said something ridiculous. His argument was that The View has become a liability to the very politics it thinks it's defending. Instead of making liberal arguments look disciplined, it keeps making them look hysterical and detached from reality. Once a show earns that reputation, it stops being a place for debate and starts being a factory for ideological comfort. And then came the finishing blow.
My district in the great state of Texas is actually a white majority district that President Trump would have won by 25 points. As I said, I'm a direct descendant of a slave. My great-great-grandfather was born on a Rosedale plantation. I am literally being judged not by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. That's the progress because, like, a lot of white people had to vote for me. A lot.
So wait,
I don't even ever want to hear Whoopi Goldberg's conversation about how it's worse to be black in America right now.
Wesley Hunt did not bring slogans. He brought family history, generational contrast, and visible proof that progress in America is real even when the country is imperfect. That is what makes Whoopi's framing look so reckless. The second someone brings evidence and proportion into the conversation, the emotional overstatement falls apart. Stephen A. did it with strategy. Wesley Hunt did it with biography. Maher did it with ridicule. Same result. Whoopi's narrative could not hold. So no, this was not just Stephen A. being loud. He forced a protected narrative to defend itself without slogans. He forced Whoopi Goldberg to stand on the actual results of the politics she keeps shielding. And once that happened, the usual insulation stopped working. Because moral posing sounds strong until someone asks whether it wins. Identity-first messaging sounds noble until someone asks whether voters are buying it. Now I want to hear from you. Did Stephen A. land the knockout, or do you think Whoopi was making a point that got lost in the noise? Drop your thoughts in the comments because honestly the conversation down there is usually better than anything happening on The View. If you made it this far, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.